main star of today's video is squash, more specifically winter squash that we were able to handpick from Rez Refuge Beautiful Garden. For the first recipe, we're going to make a vegan squash pasta. We found this squash here called Zapallo de Tula, also called Long of Naples. We're going to make a sauce out of this. For the pasta, we spotted this large round zucchini. This one is not a winter squash as it has a softer, more tender exterior. We will be using a peeler to make zucchini ribbons, which I will demonstrate in a minute. Next, we're going to need some subtle sweetness, which we can find in baby carrots. Radish greens are really underrated and are usually discarded, which is crazy. Their flavor profile is a mild pepper similar to arugula or even spinach. We'll saute these later. First, we're going to start with making the zucchini pasta. With a large knife, carefully cut the zucchini in half and use a spoon to scoop out the seeds. Cut the zucchini in quarters and with the peeler, carefully start peeling each quarter. It's going to look like a lot when you're finished, but it will shrink once it's cooked. Place the ribbons in a bowl and cover and set aside in the fridge until we're ready to use them. After cutting the zapallo squash in half and removing the seeds, we're going to drizzle with olive oil to prevent it from drying out in the oven. Season with salt, pepper, demerara sugar, and ground sage. If you don't have demerara sugar, you can also use brown sugar as well. Put it in a preheated 375-degree oven and roast until fork tender, about 40 minutes. After washing the vegetables, we're going to prep the carrots, asparagus, radish greens, and mince some rosemary. Take off the radish leaves and set them aside. I also diced the rest of the zucchini squash so it won't go to waste. Simmer the carrots with 1 bay leaf until the carrots are tender. We're going to use these for the sauce. After the squash is finished, scoop out the pulp into a blender. Now I'm going to add about a teaspoon of granulated garlic and about 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is not only good for you, but it's also good for those who are lactose intolerant because of its cheesy flavor profile. Add all of your carrots along with enough liquid to give your sauce a thick consistency. In a preheated pan, add olive oil and fry the radish leaves you set aside. You can substitute whole fresh bay leaves for this step. Sage pairs well with squash. Just fry these leaves until crispy and set them aside on paper towel on a plate. After sauteing your diced squash and asparagus, add your zucchini ribbons and season with salt and pepper. Now here's where I suggest you keep the sauce on the side until you're ready to serve. When I added the sauce in this step, I noticed it got too watery for my liking. But that's one part of cooking that you have to embrace. Mistakes will almost always be made during the creating process, but that's how some of the best dishes are created. Now I added the fried radish leaves. You can also wait to add these at the end when you plate as a garnish. And now it's time to plate. We always try different plating and this was our first trial. You can also use this vegan cheese if you're trying to stay away from lactose. But if you wanted to use regular cheese, for example Parmesan, that would go great with this dish. And here is the final plating. Hope you guys enjoyed.
Hey everyone, this is Shelby and I'm going to be showing you how to make Hubbard squash pie. So Hubbard squash pie is a winter squash and we're going to show you how to open it in 3, 2, 1. There. I promise you we're not just throwing around the squash for fun, we're literally trying to open it because the skin is super thick, which makes this squash great for storing during the winter as well. So now all I'm doing is cleaning out the insides with a spoon, and then you're going to want to try and chop it up into smaller pieces just so you can roast it in the oven. At this point you can preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Once you've cut up your squash into smaller pieces, you're going to set that on a baking tray. Grab some canola oil or whatever oil you have on hand, go ahead and rub that on the squash, and then you're going to place your squash in the oven for 45 minutes to 1 hour, or until you can easily insert a fork or butter knife into your squash. Now you're going to want to scrape out the flesh into a food processor or a blender, and you're going to mix this until you get a nice smooth puree. Now that you have your ingredients together, we're going to go ahead and whisk your wet ingredients until it looks like this, and then we're going to whisk together our dry ingredients so that we can add them into our wet mixture. Go ahead and give that a whisk until it's fully incorporated. Now you're going to go ahead and grab your pie crust. I just use the graham cracker crust to make this super easy. You can buy them at the store. You're going to pre-fill all of them up to the line, and then you're going to put it in a preheated oven at 325 degrees until they look like this. When the pies are done, they should jiggle a little and it should be puffed up on top. This pie recipe is super easy to make, and I love it because it's not fussy, and it's definitely a really great alternative to pumpkin pie. Yeah, so the pies are made from that like bumpy blue pumpkin type of squash that you guys had growing in your garden. So we tried to make this one dairy free, and we didn't put any whipped cream on it so you could like taste the squash. It's pretty good.
This tastes so good.
Yeah, this is amazing for sure.
Thank you. Is there anything you're hoping to accomplish here with this garden and, you know, with your position here at Rez Refuge?
Yo, it would be cool to like provide the blueprints. So even if I'm not here, the blueprints are made for someone else to come and do what I did.